The community center buzzes with warmth and laughter, a stark contrast to the frozen landscape outside. String lights cast a golden glow over tables laden with homemade casseroles, pies still steaming from the oven, and enough coffee to fuel a small army. Children chase each other between clusters of adults, their shrieks of joy piercing through the hum of conversation like birds singing after a storm. At the front of the room, Maya Chen raises her hands for quiet. The crowd settles gradually, parents shushing children, conversations trailing off into expectant silence. Everyone turns toward a makeshift stage, really just a slightly elevated platform borrowed from the high school, where a weathered man in his 60s stands uncomfortably, hands shoved deep in his pockets like he's trying to disappear into his own coat. Silas Kern looks exactly like what he is, a man who spent 3 decades living alone on a mountain. His beard is still mostly black, shot through with silver that catches the light. His eyes have the perpetual squint of someone who's spent years staring at distant horizons, reading weather in clouds, measuring danger in the angle of snow. His clothes are practical, worn, mended in places. He smells faintly of wood smoke and pine. 3 days ago, Maya Chen begins, her voice thick with emotion that she's barely holding in check. We nearly lost everything. Our homes, our families, our town, everything that makes Ridgeline Valley what it is. She pauses, swallowing hard. And we would have, if not for Silas Kern. Applause erupts like thunder. Silas shifts his weight from foot to foot, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else, preferably somewhere quiet, preferably alone, preferably without 200 people staring at him. Silas, you saved 217 lives. You deserve more than this plaque, but it's all we could afford on such short notice. She laughs through tears, holding up a wooden plaque with a brass plate that catches the light. Someone in the crowd shouts, "It's beautiful," and others laugh. How did you know? How did you figure out what no one else could? What all the experts with their computers and models missed? The room goes silent. Every eye fixes on Silas. Phones come out, recording. The local newspaper photographer moves closer, camera ready. He clears his throat, rough as gravel on concrete. "Well," he says, voice barely above a murmur but somehow carrying through the silence, "it all started when I heard the mountain talking." A ripple of confusion moves through the crowd. A few nervous laughs. A reporter in the back, someone from the Denver Post who drove up to cover the story, leans forward, phone already recording. "What do you mean? The mountain was talking?" Silas allows himself a small smile, the kind that suggests he knows how crazy he sounds and doesn't particularly care. "Let me back up a bit." He gestures to the rows of folding chairs. "This might take a minute. You all might want to sit." The lights dim slightly as someone adjusts them. The crowd settles, leaning in. Even the children grow quiet, sensing that something important is being shared. "It started," Silas says, 3 days ago. But really, it started 32 years before that. 3 days earlier. The seismology lab at Pinecrest University smells like burnt coffee, anxiety, and the peculiar electronic scent of overworked computers. It's 2 in the morning, and Dr. Sarah Mitchell has been staring at her monitors for 6 straight hours, watching the readouts spike and tremble like a patient's heartbeat before a cardiac event. The graduate students behind her whisper urgently into phones, calling family members, friends, anyone they know in Ridgeline Valley 30 miles north. Some are crying. All are terrified. The snow accumulation is unprecedented, Sarah says into her cell phone, speaking to the emergency management coordinator for the county. She's trying to keep her voice level, professional, but her hand is shaking. We're seeing acoustic signatures consistent with massive instability across the entire western face of Mount Callahan. The snowpack is measuring at 300% of normal, and we've had 4 separate freeze-thaw cycles that have created weak layers throughout the structure. When it goes, and it will go, it's going to be catastrophic. When? The voice on the phone demands. John Martinez, County Emergency Coordinator, a man who's dealt with floods and fires but never anything like this. 48 hours. Maybe less. The temperature is supposed to spike tomorrow. Global warming feedback, unseasonable warmth. When that hits the snowpack, it's going to destabilize the entire slope. Jesus Christ. Okay, we're activating the emergency plan. Evacuation to the eastern shelters, right? That's what the plan says. Sarah hesitates, pulling up historical data on her second monitor. Maps and models and decades of accumulated research. Yes, that's protocol. The avalanche path models show the debris flow staying west of the ridgeline. It's a natural barrier. We've got 20 years of validation data. You're sure? I mean, you're certain. The models have been tested against every major avalanche in the region since 1985. They predicted the 1998 slide within 50 meters. Peer-reviewed, published, validated. Eastern route is safe. She hangs up, but something gnaws at her, a discomfort she can't quite place, like when you know you've forgotten something important but can't remember what. The models are solid. They've been tested. Peer-reviewed. Published in the Journal of Glaciology and the Bulletin of the American Meteorological Society. Her reputation stands on them. But still, that nagging feeling. She shakes it off. Science isn't about feelings. It's about data. Meanwhile, 30 miles north, Silas Kern stands outside his cabin at 7,000 feet elevation, watching the mountain in the pre-dawn darkness. Most people would see nothing unusual. Just snow, brilliant white even in moonlight, pristine and beautiful against a crystalline sky full of stars so bright they seem close enough to touch. A wilderness postcard. Nature's perfection. But Silas sees the subtle wrongness, the way shadows pool in places they shouldn't, like bruises under skin. The faint cracks spiderwebbing across what should be pristine snowpack, dark lines against white like fractures in ice. The way the cornice on the ridge has grown, overhanging farther than he's ever seen in 3 decades of observation. He's lived on this mountain for 32 years. Moved here after Emily died, after civilization felt like too much noise and not enough truth, after the sound of his daughter's hospital room became the only thing he could hear in the city. The mountain taught him to listen to different things. Wind, weather, the subtle language of snow and stone. And right now, it's screaming. He heads inside, pulls on his heavy boots, the good ones with the mountaineering soles, and starts gathering supplies. Water, energy bars, his emergency beacon. The walk to town will take 4 hours in good conditions, maybe 5 if the snow is as deep as he thinks. He hasn't been to Ridgeline in 6 months. Hasn't spoken to anyone except the ranger on the radio in 3. But this can't wait. The mountain is telling him something, and people need to listen. The trail down is steep and treacherous in the dark. Silas moves carefully, headlamp cutting a narrow cone of light through the darkness, his breath pluming white in air so cold it burns his lungs. He passes places he knows by heart, the lightning-struck pine, the boulder shaped like a seated bear, the clearing where he once saw a mountain lion watching him with eyes that reflected his headlamp like coins. By the time he reaches the outskirts of town, the sun is rising, painting the mountains golden rose and making the snow sparkle like it's embedded with diamonds. Beautiful and deadly. He's just in time for the emergency town council meeting. The town council meeting room is packed beyond capacity. People standing against the walls, sitting on the floor, crowding in the doorway. Fear ripples through the crowd like wind through wheat, visible in their faces, their nervous movements, the way parents hold their children close. Sarah Mitchell stands at the front, laptop connected to a projector showing color-coded maps that look authoritative and scientific. Red zones of maximum danger. Yellow zones of moderate risk. Green zones of safety. The eastern evacuation route glows safe and reassuring, a pathway to survival highlighted in comforting green. We've modeled every scenario, she explains, using a laser pointer to trace paths on the projected maps. She's good at this, practiced, having given similar presentations at conferences and universities. Her voice is confident, calming. The avalanche, when it occurs, will follow the western drainage. Historical precedent strongly supports this. In 1998, similar conditions produced a slide that stayed entirely within this corridor. In 2006, a smaller event followed the same path. The physics are clear. Snow follows the path of least resistance, and that path is west. What about the eastern approach? Someone calls out from the middle of the crowd. A woman holding a toddler. That's where you want us to go. You're absolutely sure it's safe. Completely safe, Sarah affirms. The ridge acts as a natural barrier. It's solid granite, 300 feet high, with a slope that naturally deflects avalanche flow. Even in the worst-case scenario, and I mean absolute worst case, beyond anything we've ever seen, the debris flow won't crest the ridge. The shelter we've designated is reinforced, built into a hillside, designed for exactly this kind of emergency. You'll evacuate at dawn tomorrow. We're arranging buses. Please prepare overnight bags, medications, important documents. The door at the back creaks open. Silas slips in, drawing a few curious glances. He hasn't been seen in town for months. Old Mrs. Chen from the grocery store nudges her husband and whispers. The ranger, Phillips, sees him and frowns. She knows Silas doesn't come to town unless something is very wrong. His presence is unusual enough that Mayor Chen pauses mid-sentence. Silas, is everything okay? Is there something wrong at your place? He moves forward through the crowd. People shift aside, some nodding in recognition, others staring at this strange hermit who lives alone in the high country, the man whose wife died of cancer and who disappeared into the mountains and was never quite the same. I need to speak, he says quietly but firmly. Sarah frowns, her presenter's rhythm interrupted. I'm sorry, sir, but we're in the middle of a critical safety briefing. This is time-sensitive information that you're evacuating the wrong way. The room goes absolutely silent. You could hear a pin drop. A baby starts to cry and is quickly shushed. Sarah's professional smile tightens, becomes forced. I'm sorry, who are you exactly? Silas Kern. I live at 7,000 feet, north aspect, just below the ridge line. I've been up there for 32 years. Well, Mr. Kern, I appreciate your concern and your local knowledge, but I'm a seismologist with 15 years of experience and a PhD from MIT. Our models are based on sophisticated computational analysis of. Your models are wrong. Murmurs ripple through the crowd like wind. Sarah's face flushes red. She's not used to being challenged, especially not in public, especially not by someone who looks like he walked out of a Jeremiah Johnson movie. Excuse me. Silas pulls a battered notebook from his coat. The cover is worn leather, the pages inside filled with careful handwriting, charts, measurements. I've tracked every major snowfall for 3 decades. Measured wind patterns, temperature inversions, snowpack density at multiple elevations. This year's different. Fundamentally different. Different how, exactly? Sarah's voice has an edge now. The wind. It's been predominantly northwest for 6 weeks straight. Your models assume westerly flow. That's the historical norm, the average. But northwest wind loads the eastern face differently. Creates cornices, builds mass where your models don't account for it. The ridge isn't going to stop the avalanche. It's going to channel it. Funnel it directly into the eastern valley. Sarah shakes her head, trying to maintain composure in front of 200 frightened people. With all due respect, and I do respect local knowledge, but anecdotal observations don't override computational models that have been validated against decades of data. Peer-reviewed data. Published research. Your decades don't include this winter. This snowpack. These conditions. Mr. Kern, I understand you mean well, but you're scaring people with speculation based on What? Looking at the snow. Taking some notes. That's not science. That's not how this works. I'm trying to save them. The mayor steps forward, trying to play mediator, aware that the crowd is getting agitated. Some people look at Silas like he's a prophet. Others like he's a crazy person disrupting their safety plan. Silas, Dr. Mitchell, is an expert. She's published, peer-reviewed, has credentials from MIT. Can you show us any hard data? Anything quantitative that would contradict the official assessment? Anything we can verify? Silas looks around the room. Faces skeptical, afraid, wanting to believe the scientist with her computers and credentials and laser pointer, not the mountain man with his weather journal and wild warnings. The mountain's telling you, he says simply. But you're not listening. He turns and walks out, the crowd parting before him. The reporter leans forward, fascinated. So they didn't believe you? At all? Silas takes a sip of punch, grimacing at the sweetness. Someone made it way too sugary. Would you have? Honestly. Put yourself in their shoes. Expert with all the credentials versus crazy mountain hermit. Who would you trust? I don't know, the reporter admits. What did you do when they rejected you? I went to check if I was wrong. If maybe I was the crazy one. That night, Silas climbs. In darkness, by headlamp, up trails he knows by heart even in the black of night. Every route, every rock, every switchback is mapped in his mind from 3 decades of walking these paths. The temperature has dropped 15 degrees since sunset, and his breath plumes white in the frozen air. The snow crunches under his boots with that particular sound it makes when it's well below freezing. The stars overhead are brilliant, the Milky Way a river of light. At ridgetop, he stops. The wind here is fierce, nearly knocking him down. He braces himself, pulls out a probe, a collapsible aluminum pole marked in centimeters, and begins taking measurements. Core samples of the snowpack. Density readings at different depths. Angle calculations using a clinometer. Each measurement confirms his fear with growing certainty. The northwest wind has created a massive cornice on the eastern side of the ridge, an overhanging wave of snow 30 feet deep in places, cantilevered over empty space like a frozen tsunami about to break. The models never accounted for this because the historical wind patterns never created conditions like this. But this winter has been different. Everything has been different. He does the math in his head, then checks it 3 times on paper by headlamp. When the western slope lets go, and it will, the concussion will trigger the cornice. And when that massive overhanging wall of snow falls, it will funnel directly into the eastern valley like water down a chute. Right where everyone will be evacuating. Right where the shelter sits like a target. He radios down to the ranger station on an emergency frequency, his hands numb from cold despite his gloves. The ranger on duty is Phillips, who knows him, who's worked with him on search and rescue operations. Silas, this is Phillips. What are you doing up there at this hour? It's 2 in the morning. I need you to override the evacuation order. Silence. Then, what? The eastern shelter. It's in the path. When the western slope goes, it's going to trigger the cornice. I've got measurements. The eastern valley is going to get hit. More silence. He can hear Phillips breathing, thinking. Silas, I believe you, I do. But I can't override the evacuation order. Dr. Mitchell has the authority here. She's the designated expert. Unless you have something definitive, something official. I have 30 years of field observations. I have measurements. I have. It's not enough. Not officially. I'm sorry, Silas. I'm really sorry. You need to convince Dr. Mitchell or the mayor. I don't have the authority. Silas sits in the snow, watching the stars wheel overhead in their ancient patterns. Below, far below, he can see the faint lights of Ridgeline Valley, the town settled down for the night. 217 people sleeping, unaware that the official plan will kill them. He's never felt more alone in his life. Not even in the weeks after Emily died. Dawn breaks cold and clear, the kind of morning that makes people think everything is fine. In Ridgeline, people are packing, loading buses, following orders. Children excited about the adventure of sleeping in the shelter. Parents trying to hide their fear behind smiles. Silas stands at the Eastern Shelter, a reinforced community building built into a hillside, concrete and steel, designed to withstand anything. On paper, it's perfect. State-of-the-art emergency refuge. In reality, knowing what he knows, it's a tomb waiting to be sealed. He tries again. Approaches Maya Chen as she helps load supplies onto the buses, blankets, food, medical kits. "Please," he says, keeping his voice level despite the desperation he feels. "Just consider the possibility. What if I'm right? What if there's even a chance I'm right?" She looks tired, dark circles under her eyes from not sleeping. The weight of responsibility evident in every line of her face. "Silas, Dr. Mitchell rechecked everything last night. Triple-checked the models. Ran new simulations. The models are clear. Unanimous. Western Path, Eastern Shelter is safe. Models can't account for everything. They can't account for this specific winter, these specific conditions. What would you have us do? Evacuate where? West. That's directly in the path of the primary slide. That's suicide. North. There's high ground. The old mining road leads to a plateau. It's above any conceivable slide path. There's no shelter there. No infrastructure. No buildings. If we're wrong and the weather turns, if a storm comes in, people could freeze to death. We'd have 200 people in the open with no protection. You're asking me to gamble on unprotected high ground versus a reinforced shelter that every expert says is safe. If you're wrong and the avalanche comes east, they'll all die." Maya Chen's jaw tightens. Her hands grip a box of supplies so hard her knuckles go white. "I have to trust the science, Silas. I have to trust the expert with credentials and models and peer-reviewed research. I can't gamble 217 lives on a hunch. I can't. I won't. It's not a hunch. It's observation. It's knowledge. I'm sorry. The decision is made. We're loading the last bus in 10 minutes. Silas watches the buses pull away one by one, heading east down the valley road. He stands alone in the empty street, snow beginning to fall again, gentle flakes that seem innocent but carry the weight of more moisture, more instability, more danger. He sees a little girl in the last bus, pressed against the window. She's maybe 8 years old, with dark braids and a stuffed rabbit clutched in her arms. She sees him standing there and waves, her small hand against the glass. He raises his hand in return, and his heart breaks. "So what changed your mind?" the reporter asks softly, sensing the emotion. "What made you keep fighting when everyone had given up on listening?" Silas is quiet for a long moment. When he speaks, his voice catches slightly, rough with feeling. "That girl, the one on the bus. She dropped her stuffed rabbit getting on. I saw it fall. I picked it up, ran after the bus to give it back. They stopped, and I handed it to her through the window. She looked at me and smiled. Waved. Like I was someone worth remembering." He clears his throat, takes a moment. "I thought about my daughter. Emily, we named her after her mother. She'd be about 40 now, if the leukemia hadn't taken her when she was 12. I thought about all the things she never got to do. Never graduated high school. Never went to college. Never fell in love, got married, had kids of her own. All those years stolen by cells that wouldn't stop dividing. Several people in the crowd are crying now, openly. I couldn't let it happen again. I couldn't stand by and do nothing while children died. Not when I knew. Not when there was even the smallest chance I was right. Because if I did nothing and they died, I'd be killing my daughter all over again. Every single one of them." The room is absolutely silent except for quiet weeping. So I decided, if they wouldn't listen, I'd have to make them safe anyway. Silas hikes back to his cabin, moving fast despite the terrain. His mind is racing, calculating, planning. He gathers supplies with the precision of someone who's spent decades in the backcountry. Rope, flares, his old avalanche charges from his years working ski patrol in his 20s, before marriage, before loss, before the mountain became his only companion. He's kept them maintained, kept the certifications current, just in case. He loads everything into his old truck, a '95 Ford that's more rust than metal but still runs, and drives west, circling around the mountain on logging roads that barely qualify as roads anymore. If he can't convince them to evacuate somewhere safe, he'll have to try something else. Something desperate. Something that might kill him but might save them. The mountain trembles as he drives. He can feel it through the steering wheel, subtle vibrations that mean the slope is reaching critical mass. The snowpack is talking, groaning under its own weight. He has hours, maybe less. He parks at the end of an old mining road and starts hiking up the western ridge, carrying 50 pounds of equipment on his back. His knees protest. He's 63, not 23, but he pushes through. At the top, he starts placing charges. Strategic points along the ridge, calculated to create a controlled failure if, when, the worst happens. It's desperate, barely calculated, the kind of thing that might kill him and might not work and is the only chance they have. He works through the afternoon, placing each charge with the care of someone who knows that every detail matters, that every angle and every distance could mean the difference between deflection and disaster. His radio crackles. Phillips. Silas, where are you? I'm seeing seismic activity increase. It's coming soon. I know. I'm ready. Ready for what? Silas, what are you doing? What has to be done? He finishes the last charge just as the light starts to fade. His hands are numb. His back screams. But he's ready. All he can do now is wait and hope he's fast enough when the moment comes. The final hours. The avalanche begins at 2:47 p.m. the next day. Silas hears it first, a sound like distant thunder, so low it's almost subsonic, felt in the chest more than heard in the ears. Then building, growing, becoming a roar that drowns out everything else. The mountain is tearing itself apart. He's positioned himself on the western ridge, overlooking both valleys, binoculars in hand. His fingers hover over the detonator for the charges. Through the binoculars, he watches the western slope let go. It starts small, a crack appearing across the snowfield like a wound opening, then accelerates with terrifying speed. Millions of tons of snow sliding, building speed, becoming a white wall of destruction 200 feet high and moving at 80 miles per hour. Trees that have stood for a century snap like toothpicks, tossed aside like they weigh nothing. Boulders the size of cars tumble in the flow like pebbles. The sound is apocalyptic, the end of everything, primal and unstoppable. Exactly as the models predicted, it stays in the western drainage, channeled by the valley walls, following the path of least resistance. At the evacuation center, people crowd at the windows, watching the massive plume of snow billowing into the sky miles away. Sarah Mitchell allows herself a moment of relief, allows herself to breathe. They were right. The models held. Everyone is safe. Maya Chen hugs her daughter, whispers thanks to whatever God might be listening. But Silas keeps watching, barely breathing. The concussion wave from the primary avalanche hits the ridge like a shockwave from a bomb. The cornice, that massive, model-defying overhang of wind-loaded snow, trembles. Cracks appear, spreading like lightning across ice. No, Silas whispers. Please, God, no. It collapses. The entire eastern face of the ridge lets go in a cascading failure, exactly as he predicted, exactly as he feared. Everything Silas tried to warn them about, everything he calculated and measured and knew in his bones, unfolds in horrifying slow motion. The avalanche roars down the eastern drainage like a freight train made of snow and fury, directly toward the shelter. Directly toward 217 people who think they are safe. Silas grabs his radio, hands shaking. Eastern Shelter, this is Silas Kern on emergency frequency 9. Avalanche inbound from the ridge. Repeat, avalanche inbound from the eastern ridge. In the shelter, someone finally hears him. Ranger Phillips, who kept a radio on the emergency channel just in case Silas was right, just in case. Silas, what are you? Oh my God. She's looking out the window at the white wall approaching. Oh my God. Get everyone out now. You have maybe 90 seconds. Head north on foot. Don't stop. Don't look back. Go. To her credit, Phillips doesn't hesitate. She starts screaming at people to move, voice cracking with terror and urgency. Out. Everyone out. North. Run. Maya Chen stares in confusion, then sees it through the window. The color drains from her face. Sarah Mitchell has pulled up the real-time seismology data on her laptop and has gone white as paper, her hands shaking so hard she drops the computer. Oh God, Sarah breathes. He was right. He was right. How was he right? People pour out of the shelter like water from a burst dam, running uphill, panic overriding order. Parents carrying children, scooping them up without stopping. The elderly helped by the young, half-carried, half-dragged. People leaving behind belongings, medications, everything, because nothing matters except movement, except survival. The wall of snow is visible now, close enough to see individual chunks of ice the size of refrigerators tumbling in the flow. The sound is like the sky tearing. The ground shakes. They won't make it. They are too slow, too many people, too much chaos. Children falling, getting up. An elderly man stumbling. They are still 200 yards from safety when the avalanche is 50 yards from the shelter. That's when they hear the explosions. A series of sharp cracks that cut through even the roar of the avalanche. The northern ridge erupts in sequence, charges detonating in precise order. Silas has calculated every angle, every force, every possible deflection. It's desperate mathematics, physics applied with prayer, the kind of thing that might kill him and save them or might accomplish nothing but his own death. He triggers them in sequence, watching through binoculars, making micro-adjustments with the timing. The ridge collapses in a controlled failure, tons of rock and snow falling into the avalanche's path. The white wall hits the obstruction and splits, diverted just enough, slowed just enough, the debris flow channeling around the falling rock like water splitting around a stone. It misses the fleeing crowd by less than 50 yards. People can feel the wind from it, the spray of snow hitting them like a sandblaster. Some are knocked down by the concussion, but they are alive. The shelter disappears under 40 feet of debris in seconds. The building that was supposed to protect them is buried, crushed, obliterated. The place where 217 people should have died. Instead, they are standing on the hillside 100 yards away, trembling and crying and holding each other and alive, so impossibly alive. When the snow finally settles, when the roar fades to an eerie silence broken only by weeping and prayers, someone spots Silas in the distance. A tiny figure on the ridge, still standing, silhouetted against the sky. One person starts clapping. Then another. Then everyone, the sound building until it echoes across the valley, bouncing off mountains, a sound of gratitude and disbelief and overwhelming relief. Phillips raises her radio. Silas. Silas, are you okay? His voice comes back, tired but steady. I'm okay. Everyone okay down there? Everyone. Everyone's okay. You saved us. You saved all of us. There's a long pause. When Silas speaks again, his voice cracks. Good. That's good. Back in the community center, Silas sets down his punch cup carefully, like it might break. Any regrets? The reporter asks, sensing the story is reaching its end. He considers this, really thinks about it. I regret that I couldn't convince anyone sooner. That I'm not good with words. That I can't explain what 3 decades on a mountain teaches you about listening. I regret the terror those people felt running from that shelter. I regret that it came so close. But you saved them. Barely. By seconds and feet. If I'd placed those charges 10 feet differently, if I'd miscalculated by even a small margin. He shakes his head. I regret that science and intuition are seen as opposites, as enemies, when they should be partners. Both are ways of seeing truth. Both matter. What do you mean? Dr. Mitchell is brilliant. Her models are sophisticated and based on real data. She's not wrong. She's incomplete. Models are simplifications. They have to be, or they'd be as complex as reality itself and therefore useless. But that means they can't account for everything, especially not unprecedented conditions. She knows that now. Sarah Mitchell pushes through the crowd, and there's a moment of tension, the crowd remembering that her models nearly killed them all. But then Silas smiles at her and the tension breaks. We've been working together, Sarah says, addressing the crowd. Combining computational modeling with field observations. I'm teaching him statistical analysis and data visualization. He's teaching me to listen to things that can't be measured with instruments. To trust observation. To understand that models are tools, not oracles. We're making the models better, Silas adds. More adaptive. Building in uncertainty, accounting for unprecedented conditions. It's better science when you combine both approaches. The reporter grins, sensing a human interest angle. So what's next for you, Silas? Back to the mountain. Back to solitude. Actually, there's a town in Colorado having similar issues with snowpack stability. They asked if I'd consult, work with their risk assessment team. Figured I might. Back to the mountains, then. Where else would I go? He shrugs, but there's something different in his face now. Less isolation. More purpose. But it's different now. I'm not hiding anymore. I'm helping. He stands, nodding to the crowd, looking uncomfortable with the continued attention. If you'll excuse me, I've got a 4-hour walk home. In the DAC, someone calls out with concern. I know the way. Could walk it blind if I had to. Maya Chen catches his arm before he can leave, stops him with a gentle hand. Thank you, she says quietly, eyes bright with tears. For not giving up on us. For saving us even when we wouldn't listen. A wise man once told me, Silas says, and he's thinking of his father, dead 20 years now, a philosopher who became a carpenter, that giving up isn't the same as letting go. Giving up is surrender. Letting go is trust. I couldn't let go of the possibility that I might be wrong. But I definitely couldn't give up on the certainty that you might die. She hugs him, and he stiffens. He's not used to human contact anymore, but then relaxes into it. He steps out into the winter night. Snow is falling again, gentle this time, peaceful. The mountain is quiet now. Settled. The danger past. The air smells clean and cold and alive. Behind him, through the warm windows, he can hear the celebration continuing. Music someone brought, a guitar being passed around. Laughter and stories and life being lived, being celebrated, being cherished. He pulls his coat tight and starts walking. Uphill. Home. Where he can hear the mountain breathe, where silence speaks volumes, where a man who lost everything once has learned to find meaning in making sure others don't lose anything at all. In his pocket, the stuffed rabbit. The little girl, her name is Sophie, he learned, gave it to him earlier, pressed it into his hands with a tearful hug. Mr. Silas saved us, she'd said to her mother. He can keep Bunny so he's not lonely. He's not alone anymore. He never really was. The mountain has always been there, patient and massive and teaching its lessons to anyone willing to listen. But now, finally, someone else is listening too. Sarah Mitchell has promised to visit, to take measurements with him, to learn his methods. Other scientists have called, interested in his 3 decades of observations. The town has asked him to join the emergency planning committee. The hermit is becoming part of a community again, slowly, carefully, on his own terms. He reaches the trailhead and pauses, looking back one last time at the lights of the town below. Safe. Alive. Because he listened when others couldn't hear, because he acted when others wouldn't believe, because he refused to let the past repeat itself. Emily would be proud, he thinks. His daughter, his bright light who loved science and nature in equal measure, who collected rocks and pressed flowers and asked endless questions about how the world worked. She would have understood what he did, would have seen no contradiction between data and intuition, between models and observation. She would have made a good scientist. Maybe like Dr. Mitchell, but with a mountain hermit's patience. The thought makes him smile, there in the darkness, snowflakes catching in his beard. He turns and starts up the trail, boots crunching in fresh snow. The climb is steep but familiar. His breathing settles into rhythm. His mind quiets. Above, the stars wheel in their ancient patterns, indifferent to human drama, marking time in ways that make avalanches and survival and fear seem like brief flickers of light. But those flickers matter, Silas thinks. Those brief moments of terror and courage and choice, they matter more than anything. Because in the end, we're all just trying to protect each other from the mountains, from the avalanches, from the forces bigger than ourselves. And sometimes, if we listen carefully enough, the mountain tells us how. He walks on through the night, following the path home, carrying Sophie's stuffed rabbit in his pocket like a talisman, like a promise, like proof that one person paying attention can change everything. The mountain settles around him, peaceful now, its voice a whisper rather than a scream. And Silas Kern, hermit and hero, scientist and survivor, walks toward his cabin with a lighter heart than he's carried in 32 years. Behind him, the town sleeps safe. Ahead of him, the mountain waits. And somewhere between the two, in the space between solitude and community, between loss and purpose, between silence and voice, Silas has found a reason to keep listening, keep watching, keep caring. The ending, as he told that reporter, is just another beginning.